friends, this is Jenny. Thanks for stopping by today. I'm going to share a couple cards I created using some sort of different combinations of blended distress inks. I've been on a little bit of this kick too because Christina Warner has done a series that's been very inspiring, using several different combinations of distress inks over several weeks that she's used then after to create cards. And so I kind of came up with my own combinations too. Mostly this first one is, I wanted something a little bit subtle and different, and I picked some colors that would go with this piece of paper. It's from the 6x6 pad Goldenrod from One Canoe 2, that is American Crafts. And I picked the colors Abandoned Coral, Aged Mahogany, Seedless Preserved, and Chipped Sapphire. And I also used this round sort of Holo Sizzix die that I'm going to use as my sentiment. And both of these cards are going to be pretty similar in that they'll have a blended distress ink background, and then they'll have a die cut word phrase or a die cut sentiment on the front, sort of prominent. So first I'm going to use this, these are the mini inks that I have here, the mini ink cubes, and I used the help of my swatch sort of set that I created using all my distress inks and distress oxides to kind of help me come up with this combination. And I'm going to use my mini ink blender tool here, and I really love the way this combination came out. It's very different from something I would normally pick, which is why I liked it. I think it'd be a great combination for fall, but also kind of just getting out of winter here into spring. So I wanted to do a couple different cards that are very contrasting in colors, and so this fit that bill completely. This is the Abandoned Coral that I'm going to blend on first. I'm using the Craft Perfect Watercolor Cardstock from Tonic Studios, and they have a new cardstock pad of the watercolor cardstock that's in A2 size. So I'm going to start blending that on with that Abandoned Coral, and then I'm going to move to Aged Mahogany, which I think is a really underused color. It's sort of a it's a really warm color. I wouldn't say it's necessarily burgundy or maroon. It's got more of a brownish hue, but it looks so great with this Abandoned Coral and the Seedless Preserves. It takes on a much warmer tone than like a brown, and I really enjoyed using that. It's something that I don't know if I've ever really used that color in combination with something else like this. And you can see I got a little bit on the back of my finger and made a little boo-boo there, which I try to cover up later. Alright, I'm going to use the Abandoned Coral and go back and reblend that. And I picked the colors that I wanted to use based on the colors, not necessarily on whether it was inks or oxides. They all ended up being distress inks, and some of them were minis because those are the colors I had, and some of them were the larger size, but I didn't end up using any of the oxides, so it did take a little bit longer for me to blend. But it's kind of nice to go back and you know, remember where we started from. I think I've been kind of spoiled using the oxides because they do blend so easily, and so it's kind of nice to go back and do this. I've recently, since I created these cards, have bought the life-changing brushes, so I'm really anxious to create a video using those to do some serious blending. But anyway, I'm going to keep on here with the end of this. I'm going to use a little piece of paper to put my finger down, so hold it so I don't mess, get my fingers all into the distress ink. It usually doesn't mess up the distress ink, but it really does on the oxide, from what I've experienced. So anyway, I'm going to keep using that and come in with my Chipped Sapphire here, which, I mean, I love that, and the Seedless Preserves. Those colors are just beautiful. Alright, I'm going to go back and forth a little bit here until I get the kind of blend I want, and then that is going to be the main background that I use, and the piece of pattern paper that I used from One Canoe 2 is actually going to be sort of the background on top of my card base. So the thought I had was to create two different colors, sort of color waves of cardstock, blended cardstock, and then have them on a couple different pieces of pattern paper, and then have one each big die cut piece. The one I chose for this one is that Sizzix one that I just got at Hobby Lobby, or maybe in Michael's, but I like the wreath of it and the little hello part, and I thought it was just a good general die to have, you know, for everyday kind of cards. The other one you'll see in a minute is from Ulta, and it's another really good one to have for general use. So now that I've got that pretty much blended the way I'm going to want it, I'm using my Tim Holtz Media Mat and glass media mat, and I'm going to clean up my fingers there real quick so I don't kind of transfer any more ink. And then I'm going to clean up my mat, and I'm going to see where that leaves me with the pattern paper. I am going to distress it a little bit, or at least, you know, use some water and some little water droplets and add a little bit of texture to the back of that card. That is the die I'm going to use, and I'm just using some Scotch cardstock I had. I'm not sure what kind of cardstock it is. It's a good heavyweight cardstock. It might be Neenah, but I just wanted to use some something heavyweight. So I'm going to die cut it, and I actually die cut it 3 times, which I don't believe I show here, but I used my Gemini Junior to die cut it out off screen, and I'm going to layer those 3 layers on top of each other to give some good dimension, and then you'll see what I do from there. I have been using a lot of fun foam and using the same die cuts or something a little bit smaller to cut out and layering that on top of it. This was easier just to stack it, and I had used a really good heavy cardstock, so it was much easier to stack that. I'm going to score my card base here at 5.5, so it's 4 1/4 by 5.5, and use my little bone folder to score that. This is a new one that I've gotten, this sort of folder from Tonic, that is really good. It's really strong, and it's got a great curved edge on one side that's best for really making that score line creased and really sharp. So I'm going to trim down my 6x6 paper here to be 4 by 5 1/4. So it'll have a 1/4 inch on each side, and then I'm going to trim down my distress blended piece here to be 3 3/4 by 5. I think that's correct. So there'll be a 1/4 inch off of each side to give like a nice border around each piece of paper, the blended piece, and then the pattern paper, and then the card base itself. So, and I love to save all those little pieces. I think they'd be so cool to add as a little just edge for another card or something else. So this is where I'm kind of starting to think, you know, I might need to use a couple layers of that Hello die cut to really give it a little bit of a dimension. So I'm going to go ahead and add some water here. I'm just going to use my distress sprayer, spray a little bit on my hand, flick on some flickies, and then use a paper towel just to lay on top of it and kind of sop up a little bit of those. And I mean, a lot of it gets covered up, you can't really tell, but it was just a nice little way to add something else and distress it a bit. I love the navy of that pattern paper, and it pulling out a lot of that navy and purple from the blended distress inks. So I do go off screen and cut a couple more of those die cuts, and then I'm going to glue them all together using some of the Lawn Fawn glue pen, which is really handy. It puts out just the perfect amount of glue. And I'm going to stack those on top of each other. And then once I get them stacked on top of each other, I kind of decide that it was really stark. It was really white. And so I decided to go back in with the Nuvo Aqua Shimmer pen, and it's in the Midas Touch, which is gold. So it's kind of like a just a regular shimmer pen, but it's got a little teeny bit of gold shimmer in it. The same thing might be spraying it with like a gold color shine from Heidi Swapp or something like that. It made it a little bit less bright white, and it also added a little bit of sparkle, which was nice. So it helped kind of tie it into this sort of sea green, kind of olivey green color that's in that pattern paper. All right, so I'm going to poke all those little bits out, and I'm going to really start getting into it here. I'm going to use my tape runner, tape the base down, and then I think I pop up the Distress blended piece onto some dimensional foam. First, I'm going to glue all these pieces together. So I've got my glue pen there, and I just go around the sort of center of the wreath and little bits on the Holo piece, and I dab that off onto my hand, which is great because it gets rid of a little bit of a little bit of glue. I don't know why I keep saying ink. A little bit of glue to make it not so likely to be over gluey and over squidgy. So once I get that lined up the way I want to, I'm going to do the same thing with the next layer. And so I'll have those 3 layers. And all the little glue pens now, the Nuvo Smooth Precision Pen, this Lawn Fawn glue pen, the Gina K Connect, those all make it so easy to do things like this where you layer several layers of one thing on top of each other to get that dimension and to be able to line it up without having a whole lot of trouble or making it messy. It used to be really hard to do that before. But all right, so I'm going to add my dimensional foam here, foam tape to the back of the blended piece, and then I will glue that back onto the pattern paper. I had pulled out several of the new Nuvo gems. There are these sort of rose triads. There's like a rose gold rounded triangle piece, and I thought about using some of those. And then I also pulled out the new sort of purple kind of iridescent gem squares, but I didn't really like either one of those, and in the end I decided to just use some sequins that I pulled out that coordinate in the same colors, and I just trickle those down the card sort of from left to right corner using colors that sort of blend into the background piece next to it. Alright, this is the Midas Touch pen. You can see that little bit of gold shimmer there, and I go ahead and cover that entire piece of the layered die cut that I have, and I love the way it turned out. So once I let that sort of sit around, and I think I ended up having to dry it a little bit with my heat tool so I can glue it onto the back, or onto the card base there. While it's drying, I'm going to lay out my sequins here and see how they turn out. And I have a mishmash of sequins from some that are from Amazon, big, sort of bin bottles of sequins I bought on Amazon. Some that are pretty pink posh, some that are from different kits along the way, and I have them all separated into colors and just pulled out the ones that I thought kind of matched with the colors of the background. So now that that is close to dry, I'm going to use the same glue pen here, and I'm going to adhere that to the center of the blended piece here. I'm going to use a little piece of paper to hold it down while I really make sure that it's good and glued down to it. And then I'm going to use the same Lawn Fawn glue pen here, and I'm going to use some tweezers, which I end up abandoning because every time I pick them up, they literally sort of popped out of my fingers. I usually use my my Silhouette glue. It's like a quick stick kind of thing, but it's for the Silhouette glue pick thing, and it's really handy. And so I need to get that back, but I was trying to use these tweezers and it just didn't quite work. I ended up using my fingers more. So I'm going to glue those on where I've laid them out, and then that will be the end of this card. For the next card, it's pretty much the same thing. Those are the colors I decided on using. It's the Tubbled Glass, Broken China, and Shaded Lilac, sorry. And I'm going to mount that onto a piece of the pattern paper from the Dream in Color trend from Nuvo. And I'm also going to use a piece of the Craft Perfect satin mirror card, or satin card, to cut out this die cut that is from Altenew. So I'm going to let you listen to a little bit of music while you watch me basically go through the same steps to do that, and I will come back at the end of the video. Okay, you can see where I ended up here. I've got the blended panel on top of another piece of patterned paper from Craft Perfect, the Dream in Color, I believe it's the Dream in Color collection, and I've got all that glued to my card base. Now this is the die that I used to cut out from Canoe. This is Everything Will Be Okay, and I love the heart in there too. And I cut it out of the that satin chrome, it's chrome silver, no, sorry, frosted silver satin card, and I cut 2 layers of that and glued those together. And then the third layer I cut out of the new mirror card. It's called Holo Waves, so it's sort of like hologram, kind of like iridescent. It's really cool, and I set that off just a little bit offset so that it would give a little bit of a highlight behind the other 2 layers, and so you can see a little bit of it, but not too much. It is very bright and very lovely, but to me it just needs to sort of be more something a little bit subtle. So I glued those 3 layers together and then glued the whole thing back down onto the top of my distress blended distress piece. And now I'm going to use the well, I had to find the dots for the eyes, and I don't know if I found all of them, and so I think I ended up using a piece or a little drop of Nuvo drops for that one. I can't remember whether I found both of them. Those things really get away from you, especially with something that is this intricate. So but I took the heart that was left over, and I ended up I took a couple pieces of it and I tried to do some heat embossing on it, and then I ended up using it and glittering it. I just added some Deluxe adhesive onto the front of it, kind of wiped on there with my finger, and then I added some of this new Mermaid Parade glitter. It is part of the, I'm pretty sure it's part of the new Dream in Color trend, and it's a gorgeous sort of iridescent-y teal color, and I thought it would be kind of a little something different to add to that. So once I got that onto the heart and let it dry for a little bit, I'm going to pop that into where the heart piece is in the card. And I think that is pretty much it. You can see I did pretty much the same things that I did with the other card as far as blending the distress inks and adding a little bit of water. And now I'm going to go through, and I think I'm going to do the same thing as I did before and pick out general sort of colors of sequins that match, but I end up deciding I want to keep it more simple than that, and so I use all the same color in sort of this white, just white crystal clear color, and I sprinkle those around the card the same way. I just used all one color. Because they're that white and they're sort of crystal clear, they still reflect a little bit of the light of the distress ink behind them, and but they kept things a little bit more simple. And I love the contrast of these 2 cards, this sort of bright, fresher look, and then the other one which feels a little bit more wintry and warm. And so these are great cards that I can add to my stash for everyday things, and you know, plenty of hellos and thank yous and things that I need to always have on hand. So I'm going to let you see the close-ups here in a minute, and also the final cards. I appreciate you guys stopping by, and would love any feedback or advice or critiques that you have. And if you haven't subscribed, I would love that too, or give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. And I will catch you guys in a new video very soon. Thanks so much. Bye.